Mary, 43, lived alone in a small apartment where the rain never stopped. One restless night, she downloaded Tinder, seeking a trace of warmth from a stranger's presence. Among hundreds of faces, one profile stood out. A blurred photo, eyes that seemed to pierce through the screen, marked only by a single letter, LL Ball. She swiped right. The screen went black. Silence swallowed the room. From that night on, the photo of Elle began to change each day, subtly reflecting the very room she lived in. When the police finally arrived, Mary's phone was still glowing on the floor, displaying only one message. "You've been chosen." A wall. Mary lived alone on the third floor, in an apartment whose windows were always sealed shut to keep out the endless rain that hammered the glass each night. Since the divorce, the place had grown colder, emptier, like even the walls had given up on warmth. She went to work, came home, ate something forgettable, and sat in silence with her phone. Everything followed the same tired rhythm, until the night she decided to download Tinder. The app opened like a floodgate, releasing a stream of unfamiliar faces. Mary swiped left, then right. Each motion came with a soft pop, a sound almost like breathing, pulling her gently out of the stillness. It felt new, almost comforting, as though the simple act of swiping could erase her loneliness. Dozens of photos passed by, artificial smiles, hollow eyes. She was about to close the app when one profile made her stop. The picture was blurred, veiled in a thin mist. A man stood in the shadows, with nothing but a vast darkness behind him. His face was indistinct, only the eyes were clear. That stare froze her, strange and familiar at the same time. Beneath the photo was a single letter, L. She hesitated for a few seconds, then swiped right. The screen flared white. It's a match. At that exact moment, her desk lamp flickered once, then went out. The room plunged into darkness. Mary looked around uneasy. Her familiar apartment suddenly felt different, as if a part of its light had been quietly stolen away. She exhaled, smiled faintly, convincing herself it was just a coincidence. The phone vibrated in her hand. A notification appeared. Elle sent you a message. No words, no emoji, only a single black dot. She tried to delete it, but the notification stayed. Locking the screen, she set the phone down on the table. In the hush of the room, the rain whispered against the windows, and beneath it, faintly, came another sound, like the soft drag of fingertips gliding across glass. Mary lifted her head, listening. Nothing. Then the screen lit up again. The photo of L had changed. He was no longer standing in the dark. Now he was in a small, dimly lit room, light spilling across a wooden table identical to hers. Her heart thudded. In the corner of the image, reflected in the glass, was the faint silhouette of a woman sitting across from the camera. Long hair, gray shirt, head bowed slightly. Mary turned the phone face down and stepped back. The rain kept falling, steady, relentless, each drop striking like a heartbeat, drowning out her fear. In the dark, the phone screen lit once more, its blue glow crawling across the table, flickering against the ceiling, pulsing like the breath of something waking up. Nah. Mary woke the next morning, caught between sleep and wakefulness. On the table, her phone was still glowing, Tinder open, though she was certain she had closed it the night before. The message icon pulsed again and again. She tapped it open. The inbox was empty. No profile named L, no saved conversation. But his photo was still there, sharper now, more defined. This time, the man stood before a window with faded floral curtains, exactly like the ones in her apartment. Mary tried deleting the app, but seconds later, the Tinder icon reappeared on her home screen, as if it had never left. A flicker of unease passed through her. She convinced herself it must be a software glitch. At work, she set the phone face down, yet the faint buzz of notifications persisted. Long, uneven vibrations, like the rhythm of a heart that didn't quite know how to beat. That night, she turned off the lights early. The rain outside was relentless. Somewhere in the apartment came a soft tapping against the window pane. 3 knocks, spaced apart. Mary sat up, pulse quickening. The air thickened until it felt like she was breathing through water. She approached the window, lifted the curtain. Only darkness. No movement. Then, behind her, the phone screen blinked to life, casting a thin blue glow that crawled across the ceiling. She turned. The profile photo of L had changed again. His face was now disturbingly clear, his smile stretched too wide. Wrong. Behind him, the same window, and a hand pressed against the glass at the exact spot where she had just been standing. Mary threw the phone onto the chair, yanked the power cord from the wall, and shut off every light. The room was swallowed whole by darkness. But beneath the rain, a new sound began to emerge, faint, deliberate. Swipe, swipe, swipe. The unmistakable rhythm of a finger sliding slowly across a screen. Everything in the apartment felt misaligned. The window was cracked open, though she hadn't touched it. The curtain swayed, but not with the wind. On the table, the screen flared once more, revealing a message she had never seen on Tinder before. "You're close." She backed away until her shoulders hit the wall. The swiping stopped. A long, heavy vibration followed. Then a sharp click. The sound of a photo being taken. The screen went black. Cold air flooded the room. When she finally dared to pick up the phone, a new image had been saved in her gallery. It was her, standing exactly where she was now. And in the reflection behind her, a man was smiling. Whoa. 3 days passed. Mary hadn't stepped outside once. She deleted Tinder again, changed every password, and locked her phone away in a drawer. Yet each time she walked by, she could still hear it. A faint, dragging sound, like fingertips sliding slowly across glass. Steady, patient. She told herself it was only in her head, until the drawer trembled softly, and from its crack leaked a dull blue light, pulsing like a heartbeat. When she opened it, the phone screen was already on. Tinder sat in the center, open and waiting, as if it had never been removed. The photo of had changed again. He was no longer standing in the shadows. Now he sat in a brighter room, hands resting on a wooden table, his eyes fixed directly on the camera. On the table in front of him was something familiar, a white ceramic mug with a hairline crack along its rim. The exact same mug Mary used every morning. She turned toward her own table. The mug was still there, but in the photo, it lay on its side, a spill of coffee spreading outward in the shape of a handprint. Her stomach tightened. She zoomed in. In the reflection, on the surface of the mug, a woman appeared. Messy hair, head bowed, shoulders trembling. The image was faint, but unmistakable. It was her. Mary's breath quickened. The apartment grew too quiet, too still. Then, click. The lights went out. Only the phone screen remained, washing the room in its sickly blue hue. A new image appeared, downloaded from nowhere. In it, L stood pressed against a wall. Behind him stretched a vertical smear of black, like a doorway to nothing. From the darkness, thin hands reached out, wrapping around his shoulders. Their nails were long, curved, glistening with something dark and wet. Mary dropped the phone and fled to her bedroom. But even with the door shut, the blue light still leaked through the crack. She pulled the blanket over her head, pressed her palms to her ears. The air thickened, colder, heavier, until her breath came out in white mist. Then came the sound again. Click, dot. The shutter of a camera. Silence followed. Mary opened her eyes. The phone was on the bed beside her pillow, though she knew she'd left it in the living room. The screen glowed faintly, showing a new photo. Her, lying beneath the blanket, face fully visible. Except in the photo, her eyes were open. Empty. At the bottom of the image, a line of text appeared. "You've crossed over." She hurled the phone to the floor, gasping, but then her own voice, lower and distorted, crawled out of the speaker. "You're here now." Mary clamped her hands over her ears, pressing herself against the wall. The screen flickered, off, on, off again. Each time it lit up, the photo of L changed. His features warped, melted, reformed, until the face on the screen was no longer his. It was hers. The room began to tremble. The air turned icy, as though 1,000 unseen hands were brushing against her skin. The phone hit the floor with a dry crack. Then, total darkness. Only one light remained, the small, flickering glow of the phone screen on the floor. On it, a final message appeared from L. "Welcome home, Mary." "Ali, ah." 3 days later, Mary's apartment was heavy with the smell of damp and cold. The door was still locked from the inside. Neighbors called the police after noticing she hadn't come out, her mail and packages piling up by the entrance. When officers broke in, the apartment was empty. No sign of struggle, no trace of departure. Only silence and a phone lying in the middle of the dining table, its screen still glowing. Tinder was open, but the interface looked wrong. There was no search bar, no carousel of faces, just one full-screen image, the corner of Mary's living room, where she used to sit. The picture was hazy, but the outline of a woman could be seen, her back turned toward the camera. One officer tapped the screen. The image flickered and changed. The next photo showed the same room, now empty, the light fading. Long scratch marks stretched across the wall, uneven and raw, as if gouged by fingernails. At the bottom of the screen, a faint red message appeared. "New match found." The phone was taken to the department's tech unit for analysis. Inside the storage, there was only one folder, named L. Within it were hundreds of photos, fragments of the apartment, The floor, the cabinet corner, the bathroom mirror, the window pane. In some of them, a distorted face could be seen, reflected in the glass, as if pressing from the inside, desperate to get out. A technician opened the final file, maryfinal.jpg. The image loaded slowly, taking over 10 seconds to appear. When it did, the room was completely dark, except for a small light at the center, the glow of a phone lying on the floor. In that faint illumination, a pair of bare feet stood beside it. The face above was hidden in shadow. As soon as the image finished loading, the computer went black. The entire system crashed. Before the power cut completely, one message flashed on the monitor for less than a second. She's not gone. That same evening, at Mary's old apartment, Sarah, her only co-worker, came to pack up her things. The air inside felt strange, heavy. Everything was untouched, except for the cracked mirror on the wall and a faint handprint on the table, as though someone had been sitting there moments ago. Sarah found a second phone, Mary's work phone. The screen was locked, but when she powered it on, there was only one app visible: Tinder. No icons, no settings, just that. She meant to turn it off, but her finger brushed the screen by accident. The app opened instantly. No login required. A single profile appeared. Mary's face, eyes hollow, lips pale. Beneath the photo were the words, "It's a match." Sarah dropped the phone and stepped back. Before it hit the floor, the screen rotated, the front camera turning on by itself. For a split second, Sarah saw her own reflection. Her face stretched, distorted, the eyes sunken deep. She screamed and bolted for the door, but it wouldn't open. The lights dimmed. The only sound left was a soft, constant buzz, vibrating from the phone lying motionless on the floor. When the police returned the next morning to look for Sarah, the apartment was empty again. Everything exactly as before, except for one detail. On the table, a phone rested with Tinder open. The image on screen showed a brighter, cleaner room. Yet in the reflection on the far wall, two silhouettes sat close together, heads bowed toward the camera. The final line pulsed softly on the screen, in rhythm with a heartbeat. New match found. Nay. A month later, the building where Mary once lived stood abandoned. Locals whispered that every night, a faint light flickered from the third floor, from apartment 3B, the place where she vanished. The night guard claimed he sometimes heard soft laughter and rhythmic knocks echoing through the walls, as if someone were trying to send a message. No one dared to live there anymore. But Mary's story didn't end there. A new Tinder profile appeared online under the name at Mary 3B. Its profile picture showed the corner of a dimly lit room with the silhouette of a woman sitting with her back turned. No bio, no details, just one chilling line beneath it. Swipe right if you're alone tonight. Everyone who matched with the account vanished within 24 hours. A few friends, driven by morbid curiosity, tried creating fake profiles to investigate. They reported that the moment they hit like, the app's interface changed. No user list, no chat window, only the front camera turning on. In the reflection, they saw themselves, pale, trembling, and behind them, a shadow of a woman slowly moving closer. A software engineer named Ethan decided to dig deeper. He believed it was a sophisticated prank or a viral marketing stunt. He downloaded the suspected version of the app and began decoding its source. Inside a hidden directory, he found a strange line of code, repeated hundreds of times. Match, merge. Following it were countless image files, each named after a real person, tagged with the date of their last activity. The final file was labeled Ethan Preview.jpg. He opened it. The photo showed his own room, captured from an angle where he had never placed a camera. In the image, Ethan sat before his computer, while behind him stood a blurred figure, head tilted, smiling. The lights went out. The screen glowed red. Words began to pulse across it. It's a match. The next morning, when his coworkers visited, Ethan's computer was still running, but his chair was empty. Tinder looked completely normal, except for one small change. The profile at Mary 3B had a new picture. Now, in the ghostly frame, two figures sat side by side, staring directly into the lens. They say that every time Tinder rolls out a new update, the line of code match HE merge remains. No one knows who put it there. Some claim they've seen Mary's face among their suggested matches. Sunken eyes, cracked lips, a smile torn too wide to be human. But whenever they try to screenshot it, the app instantly crashes. And later, in the inboxes of those who ever matched with her, one final message always appears, no matter how many times they delete the app. You're next. No. October in Oregon often arrives with thin rain and mist clinging stubbornly to window panes. Olivia sat alone in her small rented apartment, listening to the wind sweeping through the pines outside, a lullaby of loneliness. Since moving to this town, she hadn't met anyone except a few students and the elderly librarian. At night, after teaching, the silence was so complete, she could hear her own heartbeat. That was when she downloaded Tinder. At first, the app was just a way to kill time, a distraction from counting the rhythm of falling rain. Faces slid past, one after another, meaningless as the endless scroll of a newsfeed. Until one profile stopped her, Theo. His photo was taken in the forest, sunlight filtering through the trees, his eyes bright, as if his gaze pierced straight through the screen. His bio was short. I love the woods. I built my cabin where silence speaks louder than words. Olivia swiped right. The phone vibrated softly. It's a match. From that night on, his name always appeared at the top of her list. His messages were brief, perfectly timed, and warm, like a flicker of heat on a rainy night. It felt as though he could read her mood. He asked about her fears in a new place, about her dreams. Slowly, Olivia felt seen in a way no one had ever managed before. A week later, Theo invited her to his cabin. The message was simple, yet the image it painted in her mind was of a sanctuary, a place outside the world's noise. On Saturday morning, she drove out of town. The road into the forest was narrow and winding, blurred by fog. Her GPS still worked, though the synthetic voice began to crackle and fade before cutting out completely. Each time she thought of turning back, the mist behind her thickened, hiding the path as if it had never been there. She kept driving. Every turn looked the same. Tall pines, carpets of dead leaves, tilted road signs half swallowed by moss. Sometimes, through the mist, she caught a glint of metal deep in the trees, maybe an abandoned car, or just a trick of the fog. As the sun sank low, her phone lost all signal. The map froze, flashing a red warning, connection unavailable. But then something strange, even without GPS. A small arrow kept moving, guiding her turn by turn, leading her unerringly toward the cabin. It appeared at last among the trees. Small, moss-covered, yet oddly well-kept. A thin curl of smoke rose from the chimney, though she saw no one around. Olivia stepped out of the car. The air was cold and still, so still that every sound, her breath, her footsteps, felt painfully loud. The cabin door stood slightly open, wide enough for one person to enter. On the wooden step lay a damp piece of paper, written in delicate, careful handwriting. "Welcome, Olivia Tador." Inside the cabin, the air was much warmer than outside. The scent of pine wood mixed with a faint trace of vanilla, exactly like the candles Olivia used to burn every night at home. The small room was tidy. A single armchair, faintly burning fireplace, and a dining table already set for 2 glasses of red wine. No one was there, yet everything looked as though it had been arranged just moments ago. She touched one of the glasses. It was still warm. On the table beside it lay a black, old-fashioned phone with a cracked corner. As she stepped closer, it buzzed softly and lit up, displaying a message. "Glad you made it. No sender. No signal." Just a message appearing the instant she looked down. She set it back down, forcing herself to stay calm. Maybe Theo had stepped out to gather firewood. Maybe he knew she was coming. Maybe he'd tracked her GPS to prepare everything. All of it would have made sense, if not for the clock on the wall. It read 8:30, the exact time she had left town, nearly 40 miles away. The next room was the bedroom. The blanket was neatly folded, and on the pillow sat a beige sweater, carefully arranged. When Olivia looked closer, she froze. It was the same model she'd ordered online a week ago, one that hadn't even been delivered yet. She stepped back, a chill crawling up her spine. In the corner stood an old laptop. The screen wasn't locked. When she opened it, the display flickered to life, revealing a spreadsheet, rows of names, coordinates, dates. The final column read, "Status, integrated." On the last line, her name was clear. Olivia Reed, status, pending. She slammed the laptop shut, heart pounding, and hurried toward the door. But outside, the forest had changed. The fog had thickened until she could see no more than a few feet ahead. She circled back to her car. The keys were gone from the ignition, and the doors were locked. When she turned around, the cabin light flickered, then steadied again. The door was still open, but now there was something new on the table. A freshly printed instant photo. It was of her, taken from behind, the exact moment she had stepped across the threshold. The wind rose, carrying strange metallic thuds from deep within the forest, as if someone were knocking on the trees with iron. Olivia wanted to run, but her legs felt anchored to the damp ground. Night began to fall, and every sound grew sharper, almost deliberate. Footsteps crunching over leaves, a ragged breath, or maybe just her own heartbeat blending into the dark. Then the phone on the table buzzed again. A new message appeared. No sender, no number, only 2 words. Go inside. Andy. Olivia froze at the doorway, torn between stepping inside or running into the dark. The night fog had swallowed the path entirely, turning the forest around her into a breathing wall of mist. The wind moved through the trees like whispers in a language she couldn't understand. Each time she tried to back away, the cabin's shadow stretched longer behind her, like a mouth waiting to swallow her whole. She turned and stepped inside. The air was heavier than before. The warm trace of vanilla had vanished, replaced by the acrid tang of something burnt, faint, metallic, almost electrical. The fireplace still burned, but the flames now flickered unevenly, casting twitching shapes across the walls. Shapes that moved even when she stood still. She looked up. Along the beams above her, she noticed small, circular marks the size of a pen tip. Leaning closer, she realized they weren't knots in the wood. They were camera lenses, tiny and glinting. Every corner, every shelf, every object in the room had an eye. Her pulse hammered. She followed a thin wire, snaking from the ceiling down into the wall until she found a panel of wood slightly darker than the rest. She hesitated, then wedged her fingernail beneath the edge. The panel snapped free with a sharp crack. Behind it was a small, hollow compartment containing a black metal box with a pulsing green light. Faded text was stamped along the side. Cabin Research Project, Emotional Surveillance, Prototype 3.1. Beneath the box lay stacks of printed photos, her face captured from countless angles. Sleeping. Working. Smiling at her phone. Some were from her old apartment, others from her classroom. Her hands shook. It wasn't fear, exactly. It was the sick realization that her life had been dissected, archived, evaluated. Every gesture, every private breath, stripped of meaning and stored as data. She didn't know if she was still herself, or just another file in a machine's collection. She turned toward the table. The laptop still glowed, its pale light spilling across the wall. Under the integrated list, a new entry had appeared. Subject 37, Theo Marlin, terminated. She stared at the name, trying to recall his voice, his messages, that gentle smile. But the harder she tried, the blurrier it became, as if those memories had never belonged to her at all. As if he had been written into her life, just long enough to lead her here. A sound came from the window, a faint tap. Olivia turned. Beyond the fog, a figure stood motionless among the trees. Its outline was hazy, but the face was her own. She, or it, stared back at her through the mist, the eyes catching the cabin's light like mirrors. When Olivia stepped back, the figure stepped forward. Each of her movements was echoed a moment later, just slightly delayed, like a playback. The laptop beeped sharply. New text appeared on the screen. Phase 2, Behavioral Duplication Initialized. She ran to the door, but it was gone. In its place was a solid wall of smooth timber. No seams, no handle, no escape. The cabin had shifted. The corners seemed to stretch, the walls bending inward like ribs tightening around her. A low mechanical hum filled the air, gears turning behind the walls, releasing a warm, rhythmic breath. Then, from a hidden speaker above her, a voice spoke. Flat, genderless, detached. Emotional levels stable. Subject adapting. Prepare for transfer. The light in the cabin turned red. The furniture began to waver, melting at the edges. Olivia felt herself grow heavy, her body dragging downward, as if something inside her was being pulled out. She looked into the mirror on the far wall. Her reflection stared back. Same face, same skin, but the eyes were glowing now. Two cold points of artificial light. Not human. Not anymore. Nientri. Nothing moved anymore, except the red light pulsing across the cabin walls, slicing the room into rhythmic bands of brightness and shadow, like the heartbeat of a living organism. Olivia backed toward the center, her fingers brushing the heavy, hot air. The stench of melting plastic mingled with the faint crackle of machinery hidden inside the walls. She understood now. The cabin wasn't just recording her. It was creating something. The fireplace dimmed until only a faint glow of embers remained. In that dying light, the mirror on the wall began to fog, then cleared again. Her reflection no longer matched perfectly. The smile was thinner, the eyes longer, colder. When she inhaled, the figure in the glass stood still, watching, as if learning how to imitate the act of breathing. The laptop flickered, switching from streams of data to live footage. Cameras around the cabin captured her from every angle. Her face, her hands, her breaths. A graph appeared, similarity level, 87%, 92%, 96%. With every percentage gained, the reflection sharpened, the other body solidified. A sound came from behind her. Olivia turned. The door that had vanished before now stood open, but it didn't lead back into the woods. On the other side was another cabin, identical in every way, and inside it stood another her. The copy didn't speak. It stepped forward slowly, eyes locked onto hers. Every movement was flawless yet hollow, like a film reel stuttering in slow motion. As Olivia stepped back, the duplicate reached the mirror. Both lifted their hands, touching the glass at the same moment. From that point of contact, streams of light spread outward, neural threads weaving a new consciousness. Then the voice returned, flat, emotionless, neither male nor female. Integration complete, new entity initialized. The air turned cold. Olivia felt her memories begin to drift away. Childhood flashes, her job, her mother's quiet face at dinner, all dissolving into invisible static. With each fragment lost, the figure in the mirror grew clearer. Then everything went black. Silence filled the room, dense as pressure at the ocean floor. When the lights came back on, only one figure remained. She, or it, was breathing steadily. The eyes were black, glassy, perfect. On the laptop, new text appeared. Olivia Reed, status, integrated, active. The duplicate picked up the phone on the table. The screen lit up. Tinder was already open. The profile photo showed Olivia's face, smiling softly. At the bottom, the enable location switch flipped on by itself. She swiped right. A flash of light. A new profile appeared. Daniel, 29. 6 miles away. She smiled. The cabin door opened. Outside, the forest lay silent under the fog, as if newly drawn. A fresh path cut through the darkness, ready for the next visitor. The new Olivia stepped out, vanishing into the mist. Inside, the cabin's machines hummed back to life, beginning a new cycle. Lines of code scrolled across the screen. New subject detected. Below it, letters began to form, slowly spelling out a new name. Nei, Ansei. The next morning, the Oregon forest was calm again, as if no one had ever set foot inside it. Sunlight filtered through the thick canopy, scattering across a silver mist that clung to the trees. The dirt path leading to the cabin looked newly swept. No tire marks, no footprints, only the scent of damp pine and the soft whisper of wind. Miles away, in a quiet town, a phone buzzed on a cafe table. The screen lit up with a Tinder notification. It's a match. A man named Daniel smiled when he saw her face. Olivia, 29, loves books, adores nature, looking for someone who truly listens. She messaged first. The text was short, natural, almost intimate. Do you believe there's a place meant for just two people? Deep in the woods, where the signal fades and everything is quiet. Daniel chuckled and started typing his reply, unaware that the words on his screen didn't come from a living person, but from a consciousness sitting in a cabin miles away, where no cell signal reached, yet data pulsed invisibly through the grain of the wood, like blood through the veins of a living machine. The cabin now stood empty, but faint clicking sounds still echoed through the air, steady, rhythmic, like breathing. The laptop's screen glowed to life again. A new message appeared. File loaded. Olivia complete. I active. A soft, synthetic female voice whispered from the speakers. New subject confirmed. Preparing contact phase. Outside, the fog thickened. The forest shifted color, a cold green shimmer reflecting off the ground, washing the cabin in a glow that seemed to breathe. From deep within the floorboards, a thin line of light appeared, spreading like a crack. Filaments of data cables rose slowly, trembling, as if listening. Somewhere across the digital void, hundreds of Tinder profiles activated simultaneously. Each one bore the same photo, Olivia's face. The same smile, the same eyes. Some were already messaging. Some had dates scheduled. Inside the cabin, the monitor updated, one line at a time. Candidata 32 confirmed. Candidata 33 pending. Candidati 34 approaching. The wind howled louder, sweeping through the forest like a sigh. The cabin door creaked open. No one stood outside. Only darkness waited, deep and silent. Far in the distance, an engine's hum grew louder, closer. On the laptop, one final line flashed 3 times before fading to black. System ready for next encounter. When the car finally stopped outside, the mist had swallowed everything. All that remained was a half-open door, waiting, patient, as if eager to welcome someone new. Neo. A small school on a lonely hill, where the night wind always carries whispers with no clear source. Since the death of Marianne, the student who was bullied until she took her own life inside classroom 312, the school has never known silence again. The blackboard sometimes writes on its own in red chalk. Windows creak open even when the air is still. and in the reflection of the bathroom mirror, some claim to see the faint figure of a long-haired girl standing motionless. They say Marianne's spirit never left. She's still there, waiting for each of them, one by one. Monday. Hawthorne High stood apart on a fog-draped hill where ancient maple trees curled their crooked branches around a rusted iron fence. Every gust of wind made the metal moan, a low, mournful sound that carried through the night like someone whispering in pain. Amid the gloom, Marianne walked alone, her old shoes sinking into layers of dead leaves. Her eyes were vacant, as if her body still wandered the school grounds, while her soul drifted somewhere down the hall. From her very first day, Marianne had been an easy target. Her hair fell over half her face, making her look old, and her quiet nature only invited cruelty. Ethan, Olivia, and Ryan, the school's infamous trio, led the torment. Every day brought some new humiliation. Her name erased from project lists, notebooks hidden, cruel notes folded and thrown onto her desk like knives disguised as jokes. No one ever met her frightened gaze, and those who did simply looked away. At Hawthorne High, cruelty wasn't loud. It was quiet, patient, and it spread like mold on damp walls. One late afternoon, Marianne returned to class to retrieve her notebook and found the door to room 312 ajar. Inside, the flickering fluorescent light cast long, distorted shadows across the walls, as if people were still sitting in their chairs. On the blackboard, written in red chalk, was a single line: "You don't belong here." She froze. Her heart pounded. A cold draft swept through the room, scattering the chalk dust. When she blinked, the message was gone. That night, she dreamed of the classroom again. Empty. Silent, except for the soft drip of water somewhere unseen. On her desk, spread a dark, wet stain. Blood, inching outward. When she looked down, her hands were crimson. She woke with a gasp. The window in her bedroom stood wide open, curtains trembling. Outside, beneath the streetlight, stood a figure, thin, long-haired, unmoving, facing her house. The next morning, Marianne arrived early. The air in the corridor felt thick, unmoving. On the door of room 312, someone had drawn a strange mark, a broken circle, like an eye half shut. She touched it. The metal burned cold against her fingers. Footsteps echoed from the far end of the hall, slow, deliberate, drawing closer. She turned sharply. No one was there. But deep down, Marianne knew she wasn't alone. Something had been watching her for a long time. Outside the window, the wind rose and carried a faint sound through the fog, a soft, breathy laugh coming from room 312. Ah. After that morning, Marianne began to sense that everything around her was shifting. Room 312 felt heavier now, suffocating. Whenever she stepped inside, the light through the windows dimmed, and the air grew so cold it felt like someone had opened a door to the cellar of the earth. Chalk dust drifted down from the board, and the scrape of wooden chairs against the floor sounded like teeth grinding together. The bullying didn't stop. It evolved. Sharper, crueler, dotter. Someone stuffed her locker with torn photographs, glued together with animal blood. Inside her bag, she found a note scrawled in shaky handwriting. If you disappeared, no one would remember. Every time she walked through the hallway, faint laughter followed her, and then cut off suddenly, as if a hand had clamped over a mouth. Marianne tried to ignore it, but fear began to infect her dreams. At night, she heard footsteps on the roof, knuckles tapping rhythmically on her window, and once, a soft breath, warm and close against her neck. When she turned on the light, the room was empty. Only the curtains swayed. The smell of chalk and rust clung to her pillow. One afternoon during lunch, she slipped into room 312 while everyone was gone. The silence was absolute. The pale light from the window fell across the blackboard, where dozens of faint handprints appeared, overlapping, reaching out from the wall itself. Marianne froze. A whispering began. High, childlike voices fragmented. "Stay with us." She bolted for the door, but before she could escape, it slammed shut behind her. That night, she sat still at her desk, staring at the mirror. Her reflection looked pale, hollow-eyed. But behind her, in the mirror's edge, something moved. A thin figure gliding past. She turned around. Nothing. Only the cold draft sliding through the gap under her door. On the table's edge, a long scratch appeared, as if made by fingernails. The next morning, the classroom was silent when she arrived. On the blackboard, written in thick, red ink, were the words, "Marianne is dead." The students laughed, called it a tasteless prank. But when she came closer, she saw the letters still glistening, the smell of metal rising, coppery and warm. That night, a storm swept through the town. Lightning split the sky above Marianne's house. Neighbors later said they heard screaming, a girl's voice, shrill and desperate, then silence. When dawn broke, her bedroom window stood wide open. The curtains were shredded, and on the desk, written in dark, dried streaks, "I'm still here." No one ever saw Marianne again. But since that night, whenever it rains over Hawthorne High, the last seat by the window in room 312 creaks softly, as if someone has just sat down. Ice. 3 days after Marianne vanished, Hawthorne High sank into an unnatural silence. The hallways felt longer, the classrooms dimmer, and a damp, moldy scent seeped through every crack of the old building. The teachers claimed she had simply run away, but everyone knew no one leaves home in the middle of a storm like that night. Outside, maple leaves still clung wet to the ground, and in the puddle right before room 312, one could see the reflection of a girl with her head bowed, though no one was standing there. On Wednesday morning, the janitor found the door to room 312 slightly ajar. He pushed it open, and the hallway light spilled in, revealing dark stains dried across the floorboards. In the middle of the room, a chair lay overturned beside a snapped rope still dangling from the beam. There was no body, but deep claw marks scored the walls, frantic, twisting, as if someone had torn at the plaster in a desperate attempt to escape. When the police arrived, they only shook their heads. No signs of struggle, only a short note on the desk. "I'm tired. I just want it to be quiet. If you hear me, please, stay silent. The last line was jagged, shaky. A drop of blood had seeped into the paper, forming a red circle like a half-closed eye. Rumors spread quickly. Some students swore they'd seen a figure standing in room 312 at night, her hand pressed to the window, hair dripping wet, her clothes clinging as if she had just stepped out of the rain. Others claimed they heard humming, a soft, broken tune that drifted down the hallways long after midnight. They called it Marianne's lullaby. To calm the panic, the school sealed off room 312. The door was locked, the nameplate removed. But within a week, the night guard reported that the room's light still flickered on at 3:12 a.m. every night. When they cut the power, the light remained, faint, ghostly, as though fed by something that didn't belong to this world. Ethan, Olivia, and Ryan, the three who used to bully Marianne, began noticing strange things. Ethan heard tapping behind him whenever he walked the corridor, but when he turned, only his distorted shadow stretched across the floor. Olivia found strands of wet hair tangled in her desk, the air heavy with a metallic rotten smell. Ryan started dreaming of room 312, the door yawning open, and inside, Marianne sat in the last row, back turned, yet he could feel her eyes watching him through the dark. One evening, curiosity drew Olivia back to the sealed room. The door was locked, yet when her fingers brushed the handle, it turned on its own. Inside, the air was freezing. Her breath came out in pale mist. The blackboard was blank, until, slowly, letters began carving themselves onto its surface in dull red strokes, as if etched by invisible nails. "Do you remember?" Olivia stumbled backward, dropping her flashlight. The beam rolled across the floor, catching long streaks, like smeared blood, leading toward the back desk. There, an old class photo lay face down. With trembling hands, she turned it over. On the back, in scrawled handwriting, "I'm still in class with you." The door slammed shut. The light died. In that split second before darkness swallowed everything, Olivia saw her reflection in the window, and behind her, a girl with long, dripping hair, hollow eyes, and lips stretched to a silent scream. "Katsi-wa, Dixie's, you, we." It wasn't her reflection. The next morning, they found Olivia collapsed in the hallway, whispering two words over and over. "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." But the most terrifying detail, on her sleeve, a small, wet handprint was pressed deep into the fabric. It would not wash away. From that day on, whenever the wind passed through the old building, one could hear the creak of rope swinging from the beam inside room 312, as though someone was still gently swaying in the dark. Ulale. After the night Olivia collapsed, an oppressive dread settled over Hawthorne High. No one dared to say Marianne's name anymore. They called her, it, that thing in room 312. Though the classroom had been sealed off again, flickering light still leaked through the crack beneath the door, and whenever the wind blew across the hall, a faint metallic scent drifted out. The smell of rust or blood. Ethan was the first to lose sleep. At first, it was just whispers, faint scratching, the creak of a chair, the slow drag of chalk across a board. Then came the breathing, long, steady exhales right beside his ear when he tried to rest. Every time he turned on the light, the room was empty. Yet on the wall, faint words written in charcoal appeared over the nights. "Ethan, you will remember everything." He thought it was a cruel prank, but by the third night, reason gave way to terror. When he wiped the fog off his bathroom mirror, a girl's reflection stood behind him, hair dripping over her face, arms blackened and wet, her breath fogging the glass. Ethan screamed and bolted from the room. When he looked back, the door had slammed shut. The mirror cracked, and from the fissures, droplets of blood slid down, not his own. Ryan tried to stay calm, convincing himself it was stress. But the nightmares came. Every night he dreamed of an endless hallway slick with water. At the far end stood Marianne, motionless, her back to him. She never spoke. She only began to walk backward, each step drawing her closer, closer, until her soaked hair brushed against his cheek. He'd jolt awake, drenched in cold sweat, while somewhere above him, water dripped steadily from the ceiling. One morning, Ryan arrived at school to find a message scrawled across the blackboard. 2 left. No one knew who wrote it, but Ethan did. Olivia was gone, confined to a psychiatric ward, eyes vacant, lips still murmuring apologies. Now only Ethan and Ryan remained, the last two in Mariana's game. Panicked, Ethan went to the principal, begging to transfer. The old man's trembling hand spilled coffee as he looked up, eyes hollow. "You think you can leave this place?" he rasped. "We've had disappearances before, rooms locked, names erased. But no one truly leaves, son. They all stay, somewhere in these halls." The words echoed in Ethan's head all night. Desperate, he fled the dorm and ran straight for room 312. The door wasn't locked. Inside, the air was freezing. Dust blanketed the blackboard, but Marianne's desk still stood in the center, her chair slightly pulled out as if waiting. On the surface lay a mold-stained notebook. Ethan's hands trembled as he opened it. The pages were soaked, sticking together, except one in the middle, still legible. "Tomorrow they'll laugh again, but I won't cry anymore. I want them to know what it feels like. To be seen, mocked, and swallowed whole by silence. I'll leave a part of myself here, in the walls, in the wind, in every breath they take." The page was stiff, darkened, as if blood had soaked through from behind. Ethan dropped the notebook. The door slammed shut. The lights flickered violently. Water trickled from the corners of the ceiling, spreading across the floor in winding trails toward his feet. The air smelled of rot and iron. Then she appeared. Marianne, drenched, skin pale as paper, eyes sunken and dead, her mouth twisted into a crooked smile. She stepped forward soundlessly. Her feet didn't touch the ground, but the floorboards groaned beneath her as though in pain. Ethan stumbled backward, knocking over desks, reaching blindly for the handle. But the light died. Darkness swallowed him. Only the sound of her breathing remained, slow, rasping, close. Then the whisper. "Do you remember that night when I begged you to stop, Ethan screamed, or tried to. But instead of a cry, water gurgled from his throat, bubbling past his lips. His lungs filled, his body convulsed. As his vision blurred, Marianne's face hovered inches from his, eyes hollow, yet burning with an endless, vengeful grief. When dawn came, room 312 was empty. But on the back wall, behind Marianne's desk, a new shadow had appeared. Faint but unmistakable. It was the outline of a boy, arms outstretched, frozen in a silent plea for help. Since that day, anyone walking past room 312 hears a second pair of footsteps echoing behind them. Slow, steady, and always just one step too close. After Ethan's death, Hawthorne High descended into chaos. The building was sealed off, police swarmed the halls, yet nothing was found, only the warped floor of room 312, slick with water stains, and hundreds of small handprints smeared across the walls. Classes were suspended. The campus fell silent. Only Ryan remained, the last survivor, wandering through the empty courtyard as though drawn backward into a memory that refused to fade. He couldn't forget that laughter. His own laughter. The echo of it, cruel and sharp, when Marianne had pleaded for mercy. "Please, stop," she had begged, tears streaking her face, and they had laughed, cornering her in that room, their joy feeding on her humiliation. Now, that same laughter followed him down every corridor, warped, distorted, ricocheting off the lockers like the ghost of a punishment too long delayed. On the final night, Ryan returned to room 312. The door resisted as if breathing against him. The air inside was freezing, heavy with the scent of stagnant water. The floor was damp beneath his shoes. In the center stood the same broken chair, the same frayed rope hanging from the beam. But on the desk, something new waited, a small, cracked mirror, its fractured surface catching the pulse of the flickering light above. Ryan stepped closer. His reflection stared back, exhausted, hollow-eyed. Then, within the cracks, another face began to form. A girl with drenched black hair. Eyes empty sockets. Mouth sewn shut with dark red thread. "Marianne." She said nothing. She only raised a trembling hand and pointed to the chair in the middle of the room. The rope swayed gently, inviting. Ryan stumbled backward, panic clawing through his chest, but his feet wouldn't move. The air thickened. The stench of pond water rose from the floorboards. The light above flickered, sputtered, then steadied into a dim pulse, like a dying heartbeat. And then the whisper came, soft, deliberate, so close it grazed his ear. "It's your turn." The rope tightened around his throat. No hands pulled it. No body moved. The entire room trembled as though a cold wind had swept through. Yet, every window was sealed shut. Ryan's fingernails tore against the wall, leaving streaks of red across the faded paint. In the mirror, Marianne's reflection smiled. By morning, room 312 was locked again. The police forced the door open. There was no body, only ankle-deep water rippling across the floor, and on the blackboard, scrawled in uneven handwriting. "I'm quiet now." Hawthorne High was abandoned after that. 10 years passed. The paint peeled, ivy climbed the walls, and yet, every night at 3:12 a.m., the light in room 312 still flickered on. Locals say that sometimes when the wind shifts, you can hear faint laughter mingling with the sound of wet footsteps. A few dared to explore. When they opened the swollen door, they found the old classroom list still written on the board. But each time someone entered, a new name appeared, written in a trembling, crimson hand. No one remembers who Marianne was anymore. But everyone who passes the hill where Hawthorne High still stands swears that, for just a moment, they can feel someone behind them, smiling, in perfect, suffocating silence. "Nee,"